Welcome to the second session of our webinar series, and I see a lot of names here that were on the previous webinar, and it's great that you decided to join us once again. And for those who are joining us for the first time, a big warm welcome as well. So this session aims to bring together people from across the art world, artists, creators, galleries, collectors, as well as anyone curious about where the art market is headed next. So we are really happy to have you here. And my name is Evelyn, and I'm head of communication at Digital Original. And if you don't know who Digital Original is, so I'm going to tell you now, we are like a Shopify, as I can say, but for the art market. So you can create your own art storefront if you are artists, digital artists, galleries, or curators, and you can upload and sell your artworks globally, and of course connect with the global collectors. And it's great because you can control everything by yourself, and you don't need middlemen, you don't need no design skills, no tech skills. And you can check our website. I just sent it in our chat, and you can proceed to our website and check and register and actually try our solution in real time. So today's topic is one that's very important topic, and we have been looking forward to it, is re-entering digital. Who will drive the next big move in digital art? And I'm really excited to introduce our speaker and our host. So let's start with our speaker, Nick Walter, founder and CEO of Vortic. Nick built some of the most forward-thinking digital tools in the art space, helping museums and galleries engage global audience in immersive ways. And he brings 15 plus years of experience in scaling innovation, not just in the art world, but across the major industries. So, hosting today's conversation is Garrett Fletcher, Director of Art and Technology in Sotheby Institute, a researcher and educator who is deeply involved in topics like blockchain, digital provenance, and evolution of art infrastructure. By the way, Garrett is doing his PhD in digital provenance. So, we are lucky to have you both now on our webinar. And Garrett, the floor is yours.
Thank you so very much, Evelyn, for that really kind and warm introduction, and welcome to everyone who has joined us. Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy morning, I assume, schedules to join us on this lovely Friday as we discuss. Well, we're talking about tradition, we're talking about turbulence, and we're talking about all sorts of things that come to mind in the conversation between myself and Nick. Nick, it's fantastic to be on the call with you. It's been a wee while since we've caught up, and I'm really, really looking forward to hearing all about the exciting things that you've been up to professionally, where Vortic, your organization, is, getting a sort of a sense of how you guys are navigating the market in 2025 and what you sort of see maybe over the horizon as far as some of the developments of the interface between art and technology and how that's sort of particularly reshaping the way that we understand cultural consumption. So thank you for joining us. And it's really kind of Evelyn to kind of give us a bit of a foreground as to some of the things we're going to be discussing today. For those of you who had the time to visit us last time in our last session, we spoke with Will Corner from TAFAF, the head of affairs there, and it was really interesting to get his sense of the things that his organization were looking to do, the strategies they were looking to undertake in order to attract and maintain audiences, perhaps slightly outside of traditional audiences, thinking about different generations of buyers and collectors coming into the art fair and providing that proposition for the galleries to continue to participate in the art fair and provide that kind of that moment where collector meets dealer or meets gallerist and transactions can happen. So we're going to kind of carry on from that position, I think, and start to navigate through where Nick's organization is world market leader, looking at the relationship between the the interface of the cultural experience, the positioning of digital and physical culture, and how galleries and institutions and collectors can obtain and access cultural production in a sustainable and very much digitally and tech forward way. So Nick's going to sort of explain a little bit about what the organization, what the competencies of Vortic are. But I guess first things first, Nick, I'd really just like to welcome you to the conversation and ask you if maybe from the outset, if you could give us a little bit of information about your background, but also a little bit about what it is that sort of the journey that Vortec has taken, I guess, sort of over the last sort of 5 or 10 years to where you sort of see yourselves as an organization at the moment.
Sure. And thanks for that, Gareth. Thanks for the intro, and thanks to Digital Original for inviting me here today to speak. Yeah, really happy to be here because there's so much going on in the sector at the moment. I feel like there's a lot to talk about. And yeah, Gareth, keep me in check because my ADHD will probably go off the scale and I'll be over talking. So just pull me back into line if you need to.
All
But
good.
thanks for everyone for joining as well. So a little bit of background on me. I'll try and give you the short version, but my job really is to build and scale companies. That's what I've been doing for the last 15 years in the digital sector, really since the arrival of smartphones and mobile apps. That was really where I first started to venture, was web and smartphone. The iPhone 3 had just launched, and this was a point at which I decided to leave the finance industry and pursue my passion. So probably since about the age of 16, I'd been building businesses in my head. But before the internet and in the early stages of the internet, it wasn't very easy to do that unless you had bricks and mortar stores, or you had media companies and things like that. So my first business was a sports media business that I launched at around the age of 27. And that was my first foray into the world of technology and startups. And it was a steep learning curve. I really kind of established myself as a bit of an expert in social media marketing, which was new at the time. We only really had Facebook and Twitter as the two main channels, and there wasn't the ad infrastructure that there is now. So a lot of it was what we probably refer to now as guerrilla marketing and doing things in more interesting and wacky ways than paying for paid ads that heavily target people on social. So that was the beginning of my journey into technology. From that business, I then joined a consultancy business where I was part of that company, and we do digital transformation projects with blue chips like people like Thames Water. I worked on a UX project for the world's first smartwatch out in Italy. That was really good fun. And we also had an internal incubator as well. So we had our own products, and I was the sales and marketing director for the portfolio and for the consultancy. So I'd work across the portfolio at how we could bring those products to market, and then how we could market them and really grow them with the right audiences. And we had a lot of different products. We had currency converters that used OCR technology. We had two-factor authentication platforms that we were working with big banks. I worked on some consultancy projects around Bank of the Future and what the future of banking could look like, and lots of weird and wonderful things. And then from there, we actually flipped out an internal innovation called One Pulse, which was mobile-based market research. I had a big hand in the product design of that and the UX, and how we could create a social experience and create a community around market research. And we were all about short, sharp, fast term market research. You could ask a maximum of 3 questions, you'd get instant responses, and it was a real agile way of doing market research, rather than commissioning a market research company in a 6 month process and tens of thousands of pounds. We offered the opposite of that, and the best thing for the brands that we work with, people like Coca-Cola, Marks and Spencer's, KFC, other big brands, they were able to access younger audiences. So at that time, it was a mainly millennial-based panel who were hard to reach with market research. So that was a great company, very disruptive. And most of the things I've worked on, whether it's two-factor authentication or mobile-based market research in real time, it's all been disruptive stuff. And then bringing it kind of up to the last 8 years, I knew Oliver Miro from our time in finance. We'd spoken about maybe doing a venture at some point. He'd experienced VR, I think, whilst walking through Selfridges and loved it, and then started to delve into the world of VR. We had a VR rig in my office at One Pulse, which I really enjoyed, and I kind of saw the potential in that. And Oliver came to me and said, I see big potential for this in the art world. We have to ship a lot of artwork all across the world. We have to show it to collectors. We have to find premises to show those works. We have to ship it. We have to unbox it. We have to rebox it. We might have to ship it somewhere else. There's insurance costs, resource costs, everything. So it was a very costly process. And the biggest cost of all is the cost of the environment. So he saw the ability to maybe use VR to present artworks to collectors all across the world. That was the first thing, our first target, the first thing we set out to achieve. And it was a really great journey. You know, we knew we could impact carbon footprint and reduce those emissions by shipping less. But then it opened this whole world of virtual exhibitions and how galleries and art fairs and museums can really present exhibitions in a way that they hadn't been able to before. Everything was on flat websites. Unless you visited in person, you weren't really able to have that great, and like the physical experience was a lot better than the digital one. The digital one, you didn't really connect with the artworks. And actually, at Victoria Miro's gallery's 40th anniversary party last night, I was speaking to a collector. He was a younger guy. I say he's younger, but he was about my age, and I keep thinking I'm getting old. So yeah, he was telling me how he really struggles to connect when works are sent through to him on PDFs, or he has to see them on a flat website. And and then I told him what we did, and he was like, "That's amazing." He's like, I really want to try it because I could see myself having more of a connection with the artwork through seeing it in scale, in an environment that makes sense. So yeah, I told him the deal is I'll send him out a headset to try it, but he's got to give me some honest feedback. So that'll be an interesting one to see how he reacts. But he was a younger demographic of collector. And certainly that's, you know, where the technology has resonated. And I think there's so many possibilities, you know, new ways that artists can tell stories by attaching audio to each artwork. You know, there's things we can do with avatars in spaces. There's the mixed reality component that we've done with Apple Vision Pro and Meta Quest, where you can be in your home and be putting artworks on the wall in front of you and spending time with them, looking at them in detail, switching them out, seeing what works. And it's a really, really great experience. But obviously, headset penetration is still growing. And yeah, we got to wait for that kind of market maturity. But we do work on web, we work on smartphones. So yeah, there's lots of crazy stuff going on in my world. And yeah, we could maybe delve into that, but hopefully that's a good 5 minutes to give you a flavor of
Brilliant.
what my background.
Thank you so much, and I do enjoy that sort of real world experience when you're meeting a collector and you're basically providing a tailor-made solution to their need at a 40th birthday. That's fantastic. What I was going to ask, Nick, is I have had the fortune of experiencing the Vortic experience. I know there are various different aspects to the organization and the business, but I mean, just to give, I guess, some of the listeners or viewers out there a little bit more context, if possible. What is it like when you are either wearing the VR headset or just accessing via web a curated space? Can you just sort of run us through the different level of kind of detail, specificity, and the sort of the environment that we sort of want to try and get them to understand so they know what the Vortex proposition looks like?
Sure, yeah. So our virtual environments are anything you want them to be. So what we do is we do digital replicas. So we might replicate a gallery like for like. We've done that with multiple galleries across the world. And it might be, for example, they come up with a concept gallery that is still on brand, as it were, and they have a brand new space that lives only on digital. Some galleries want to replicate their spaces and have the digital versions, and others want to go for a complete concept space. So, for example, we work with the artist Doug Aitken. He wanted to design this outdoor indoor space to present his works in. You know, you start the experience outside, there's a red sky, you're in a concrete um, walled open aired environment with a hot air balloon floating outside of a window and his sculpture with a soundscape in the middle rotating. So there's lots of different types of environments you can do. They are virtual, and then with the and you like people can decide what they'd like, what fits the narrative of maybe the show. We had a one called Vampire Mother, and it was in a vampire castle, and all the artworks are hung in a medieval style, very dark and dingy, but amazing architecture. And our CG team do an amazing job at creating these environments. So yeah, people can have whatever they want, and it really gives a different dimension to experiencing art. You're in a immersive space when you've got the VR headset on, and it feels like you're really there. And then you can have that special moment getting up close to the art without the dynamics of either being in a museum or a contemporary art gallery where you probably haven't got the time to spend with the artworks and people are around. And it's a very it can be a very intimate experience, but we do, let's call it multiplayer, where you can meet others in there. We've done guided tours. So Doug Aitken gave a guided tour to collectors from all across the world who all had the headset on. And then Doug took them round as an opening of his exhibition. He took them through all the digital rooms. So we had people from East and West Coast America. We had people in Asia. We had people in Europe. So we can do lots of amazing and wonderful things. And the environment really, takes it to a different level from a flat, web interface. And we do that 3D and web as well. And we've done quite a lot of innovation on that web experience because it is really, really important for us right now, especially when VR is still growing.
Totally. No, thank you. No, that's really interesting to hear about the different relationships between the artists, the environment, the building, and that kind of the immersive experience. And it's really interesting to get that sort of networked experience across the globe simultaneously. Um, I might switch just briefly, just to, I guess, get a little bit more information about some of the commercial implications of the platform. I'm just thinking about this from the perspective of a commercial gallery. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that providing this excess, so this extra access for collectors from around the globe, is potentially likely to have impacts on sales, potentially, at least giving an experience that might have a follow-up kind of transaction associated with it. What sort of commercial applications are you seeing that are taking off, or at least um, becoming very successful through the interface of the sort of the Vortic experience in the commercial sector?
Yes, it's a great question to ask because there is a lot of exciting things happening. And I think, technology at the end of the day, whether it's our platform or someone else's software or a smartphone, it's really what do you want to do with it? And it takes the user, a lot of the time when I describe technology, what you put in is what you get out. If you've got a CRM system and you only use 5% of the capability, you only get 5% of the capability out of the other side. So people really, it's up to the user to really embrace what's possible. And we've been very, very lucky in that working in a creative industry, people come up with creative ways to use the platform. So and it's been used in a range of ways. So for example, if I take us back to COVID, when all the galleries were closed, we did an initiative with some partners called the VOV, and that was 15 leading museums and galleries from across the UK who all curated digital shows, put them on one platform. It was all powered by Vortic technology, and that enabled art lovers to still have contact with exhibitions when all of the galleries and museums were closed. So that was a very special thing to do as a response to the pandemic, but it gave people that access to art, and really that's what our technology enables. And then if we flip to things like art fairs, we've done a fair in Korea. And again, that was on the tail end of COVID, 2022, I think it was. And collectors still weren't traveling, but the fact that it was in Korea in the first fair, it also is a barrier maybe for Western collectors to travel there. So what we did is we worked with Freeze and their VIP program, and we sent out 100 headsets to collectors all across the world, so they could wear the headset and they could visit the experience in Korea virtually without the need to travel, without the need of the carbon emissions. But they were still able to access the artworks and see booths and feel a special experience. So that was a really great one that we did. The other thing, a lot of things, we're big advocates of our own technology as well. So it's not just our partners extending their galleries, without having to spend multi-millions of pounds on launching a new gallery site in a capital city somewhere, or glamorous location. They can extend their galleries digitally, and show different types of artists. So one thing, we work very closely with Victoria Miro, and one thing that they've done is they've used the platform to showcase artists that aren't necessarily signed to them or represent that they represent, and they're able to show things that new artists that could attract new audiences, or their existing audiences get something new. And it's a really great way to engage collectors and give them something else. We launched a program called Vortic Curated, which big shout out to the team, Alice, Frankie. And this actually came about under Ella, who's unfortunately not with us. She passed away during the project, which was another very difficult thing for the organization to go through, and very sad. But she was a big part of this as well. And it was all about opening up our technology to curators who could then use our technology almost as a blank canvas to say, hey, go find the artists you want to work with, bring them into the platform, create these amazing exhibitions, put them out online. And we actually started to move into more of a hybrid presentation with those. So we worked with House of Cocoa in London, and we had I think 3 or 4 exhibitions in their space in Camden, where we had a highlight show, and then we had the rest of the inventory that you could see. The rest of the exhibition was digital only, and we had headsets so people could come and try on the headsets and see more. And then we could put these exhibitions on in a great space that attracted their members as well as art lovers in general. Whether you follow the artists or the curators, you could come and have a physical experience and a digital experience. So that was really, really good. And then we also did that with Paul Smith as well. So we started to work on the brand side. And we did the same thing in Paul Smith's flagship store on, I think it's New Bond Street. And that was an amazing event. You're in Paul Smith's store, and then there's art everywhere, and you can go downstairs and see art. And then there's this digital activation as well. So yeah, we've done some really, really great things, and we've seen our clients and users of the platform doing some incredible stuff. So yeah, it's been really, really good to see.
Thank you, Nick. This is really, really fascinating to hear all the different implementations, and I'm obviously very, very sad for your loss throughout the project. I guess one of the key terms that you used earlier, which is a word that we keep hearing time and time again, and that's the importance of sustainability when it comes to accessing culture. And you made reference to galleries having to create, ship works, physical works around the world, the carbon emissions associated with that, bigger belief. And it's clear to me, and I've seen on your site, there's a real drive towards foregrounding that sustainability message, which is obviously the right message to be associated with and promoting. And so I guess I'd love to get your view on how that theme, how the importance of providing sustainable solutions and options for collectors or people to experience or engage with work, how that theme or that necessity has resonated with your target market. Maybe even perhaps specifically, are there particular demographics for whom the access without carbon of culture is perhaps considered more of a high priority than perhaps others? So are you seeing sort of upticks across some of your user base in that context?
Yeah, it's a really interesting area of things. So one of the things, like I said, when we set off on this journey, we had some key values that we always wanted to stick to. Quality was one of our key values because we always wanted to represent artists work in the best way possible, and obviously show that in the best way we could digitally. And that was very, very important to us. And, from working with Apple and showing them what we've done, they kind of said to us, the quality you produce is the best we've seen in immersive and VR. And coming from Apple, it's a feather in the cap, and it's great to hear because that was one of our values. But another one was the sustainability angle, and being able to cut down on carbon emissions and cost. And I think it's just a really fascinating conversation around this at the moment. So the GCC, the Gallery Climate Coalition, was formed, which was really for commercial galleries to sign up to a manifesto and a criteria to reduce their carbon emissions. We all know that the contemporary art world really revolves around an art fair circuit, which creates tension, right? Because these are moments in which commercial galleries can sell. They're very physical. We've seen the bounce back to physical after not being able to have it in COVID and things like digital fatigue, but my whole life's like mainly digital. So, but yeah, people kind of yearning for that return to physical experiences. And now we're starting to see dynamic shift in that area for a number of reasons. One being carbon emissions, others being, we're in a downturn in the contemporary art market at the moment, and that's making, it's cost cutting for a lot of galleries. It's also making people consider art fair attendance, because are they getting the ROI on what they're putting in to pay for the booth? And then there's things like the visitor experience, and we can probably get into that a bit later, how AI is starting to revolutionize visitor experience. Art Basel did some amazing things there, and will continue to do so in the AI side. But yeah, it's kind of, I'd say it's more important for some audiences than others in terms of what we're seeing and what we're hearing. I think we probably haven't seen the changes that I think are necessary just yet, but people are working towards, I think, a 2030 reduction in carbon emissions. So we actually commissioned Danny Shivers from GCC to do some research on comparing Vortic and the carbon emissions of doing a digital exhibition or digital art fair with a physical one. And, Vortic can reduce carbon emissions by 99.6%, lower than doing a physical fair. So there's no comparison in terms, by the time you've flown and shipped and everything, there's no comparison. And, it's a big challenge for the art fair model as well, because art fairs, they've struggled a little bit to digitize a component of the fair. We've been in that world, and we've seen what's happened. But what we're seeing more is, and again, it's a bit contradictory in a way. We're seeing Gen Z, where probably to Gen Z, climate and these types of conversations matter more. However, they do like physical experiences, and they like to shared physical experiences, but they do embrace the digital side as well. So I think what we're seeing audience attitudes starting to change in the contemporary world, which is really where I spend the majority of my time from a business perspective. However, I have a holistic lens across everything, or I like to try and keep in touch with all different facets of the art world, from the grassroots, upwards. So we're seeing maybe old habits dying hard, let's say, in the contemporary, high-end contemporary. And then we're seeing these new, more localized, Gen Z driven, more community driven, more, let's say, conscientious of things like climate change and others. We're seeing that audience starting to really change and have these important discussions. And it's a little bit like AI, and let's take social media. All of these technologies have been created, and we've had these unintended consequences. And I think what we're seeing in the shift in the digital world is, when we created, or when all the social media platforms were created, we weren't really talking about the unintended consequences and being like, what ifs? What if this doesn't go the way we'd like it to? And social media kind of just happened, and now it's had this impact on humanity. There's a lot of positives, but there's also a lot of negatives. What we're seeing with AI is we're at least talking about the risks up front all the way along. Everybody has a bit more awareness of these risks. And what I'm seeing in those Gen Z audiences is that kind of theme continue, whether it's risks around AI, talking about impacts of mental health, or being more conscious of climate change and impact. Those conversations are happening, and I think that's the really, really interesting to see thing to see in Gen Z audiences, and really they're the future of the art world, they're the future of the world itself. And I think if they can drive more conversation and drive more actionable change, and there's going to be a certain level of disruption in the art world as we have this generational shift of older collectors and older gallerists, passing over to a new generation, and we have digital art and we have NFTs and we have all these amazing innovations in the space that mean this is all shifting as we're talking right now, and there's so many interesting things to get into. But yeah, we find people are more conscientious. It is a consideration. I don't think climate is the main consideration. It's one of many, and it's probably lower weighted for many galleries than others. And we've seen, I think is it Kate McGarry? She kind of decided to only travel to fairs by rail. So there are a few like that are kind of, they're values driven, they're ethics driven, and they want to, do things in the right way. But there's always commercial tension. So.
Absolutely. No, thank you. This is really interesting to hear your sort of inflections on the way that many different things are kind of, I guess, coalescing into a moment that we find ourselves experiencing now. We've got so many different disruptions, so many different technologies, so many different expectations. I think your discussions around the unintended consequences of social media, I think is a really interesting theme to explore. And it's something which, as you suggest, we are very much trying to anticipate what that looks like from an artificial intelligence perspective, and what those sort of narratives look like. I guess maybe whilst we're talking about AI, let's just continue a little bit further in this discussion. You suggested that Art Basel was perhaps doing some interesting things in this space. Are there any other examples of how you're seeing, or at least things that you might be knowing about sort of in the pipeline, where AI is, from what maybe you can see in your professional perspective, is going to have a pretty astonishing impact on the way that we create, consume, mediate, transfer, enjoy culture and cultural experiences? Can you give us some sort of insights on that side of things, Nick?
Yeah, so for me, the most fascinating thing happening alongside VR and mixed reality is AI. And yeah, like I know Craig Hepburn from Art Basel, who was the old chief digital officer, and he really set the wheels in motion at Art Basel to lay the foundations for what they're getting to now. So Art Basel, they tried to do some early stuff where they were implementing their own GBT internally, so staff could query things and ask questions and find information in a better way than you could using, your Google Drives and other things, which search always baffles me how bad it is, but it's awful. And yeah, surfacing this information, collecting knowledge, allowing people to access that and, get answers quickly. That was what they were kind of trying to do internally. And then they did the partnership with Microsoft, and we've seen that start to really unfold. I think it was maybe the first, was it Miami? Maybe they first launched the app, but the app is a concierge app. It helps visitors to the fair plan what they're going to do, where they're going to go, what they're going to see. It gives an extra layer of information to artworks. You can point and do some image recognition and visualization on artworks to get extra layers of information. And this is really, at the blue chip end, enhancing the visitor experience. And it's incredible to see things like that coming through that are usable and user friendly and enhance the experience. So yeah, I think this is going to continue to pick up some press. And that's really on the kind of, there's AI lens technology, you get personalized recommendations, you get an exhibitor, like you get to manage the exhibitors and where you're going to go. And, yeah, I think they piloted it at Miami, and then yeah, it's gonna roll out again for Basel, which is soon. So that's very exciting to see, and you know that those partnerships with Microsoft, um, you know, to create really the first AI powered art fair app is really exciting to see. So that's great. But you know, I also know that the Art Basel are not really a tech company, and pushing through tech initiatives like this are difficult because you've got to manage internal stakeholders. People have, you know, people want to focus on what they're good at, and this might seem a bit scary. And you know, but it's a good example of the digitization of an organization. Then I think beyond visitor experience, and certainly, you know, if we look at things like ChatGPT and you know they've just teamed up with Johnny Ive, and maybe there's going to be a wearable with a camera that sees what you see and can give you information. You know, we could see, or we will see, and we are seeing people building AI wrapper technology, right? So they take the core LLM, maybe a chat GPT, maybe a Claude, they put a wrapper around it and they productize it very quickly. And the barrier to entry is a lot lower because you can do this very quickly and easily. You can code this yourself. You can, you know, a bit like Digital Originals products where it's no code, a bit like Vortic's product where you don't need to be a 3D designer or skilled in 3D. You can just drag and drop things into place and create these amazing experiences. And, you know, we're starting to see that shift into people doing this. But ultimately, the LLMs or the big AI players, these big generic platforms hold the power here because they are collecting all the data, they're constantly training their models. And yeah, you could, if I kicked out an AI, you know, artwork recognition and it did something and activated further information, I'd probably be using ChatGPT or similar or Llama or someone like that to power this. So I don't really need to build that app because I could just use ChatGPT to do it. I might have more clean experience, but yeah, so there's going to be a lot of disruption here, one way or the other. And for me, there's a huge opportunity to, you know, what our Basel tried to do internally is really, really interesting. And I think now, in the age of we want more efficiency, you know, there's less, it's a downturn in the art market. Where could people be investing? And for me, people could be investing in their internal AI systems to do things that they're currently outsourcing to third party software. So, inventory management, databases, this is bread and butter for AI. You know, and you could really redesign your whole internal stack around AI. You could own that, make it specialized to your organization, and you could be a museum or a commercial art gallery or whoever. And there's huge opportunities there for really developing your own products at the same cost as what you're probably paying to a third party. There's probably a bit more setup cost, and there's obviously not that level of expertise, but there's huge opportunity here for organizations, whether it's museums, commercial art galleries, or other, even artists, to leverage AI and start to use it in a way that was technology was inaccessible because you'd need to invest a few hundred thousand into building a prototype of a mobile app. So for me, that's, you know, there's so many opportunities there, and I think it's going to be interesting to explore.
Thank you, Nick. This is really, really, really insightful. And you're giving us a really lovely sense of some of the opportunities that are emerging through the integration of artificial intelligence solutions within internal, external functions of organizations. I think maybe last time we had a good conversation, we were very much talking about structures that were based on blockchain systems and
Mm-hmm.
integrations within Web3 sort of applications and that kind of thing. It would be really nice just to get your sort of a bit of a sort of perspective view on the role that blockchain plays, perhaps now in the way that we might be integrating some of these solutions, your thoughts on the sustainability of those types of solutions and whether or not, that blockchain structures and Web3 structures are likely to persist alongside AI or how they might sort of integrate together, or just any of your views on that conversation, because I think it's sort of incumbent on us to think about how, we have these sort of hype cycles, and sometimes it can be really important to get that perspective and look back and think, oh, actually, 2 years ago we were discussing this, but actually look what has persisted, and look at how some of the applicability of blockchain systems, for instance, have increased in their competencies and in their usefulness.
Yeah, and we're moving to this more digital based world, and with that, we're already seeing, you know, uh, what was it, deep fake Tom or whatever it was, the Tom Cruise deep, so we're already starting to get into this world of what's real and what's not, and who owns this image or who owns this piece of artwork and who's licensed it and who hasn't. And for me, blockchain's the obvious solution to this in the digital landscape. So I've had a lot of interactions with different blockchain um, technologies coming up and around, and people wanting to do this. We've seen quite a few things emerge. Um, I'm awful with names, but it'll come back to me. But there was the one that was part of Art Basel. I can't remember their name now, but okay, it'll come back to me. But yeah, for me, I've worked with I was working closely with someone who was trying to launch a blockchain business called Nifty Tag. And what Nifty Tag would do would you'd actually attach a physical tag to a physical artwork, and then that artwork could do multiple things. Number one, you could do the authenticity, the provenance, all of that by scanning the tag, but you could also sort of activate all the artwork details. So if you walked past an artwork and you were like, "Oh, I really like that artwork," you could almost scan it, get all the details, who's the artist, where can I buy it, and those type of things as well. So I think there's kind of commerce features that are going to become more prevalent. I think there's obviously the authenticity and the provenance stuff, which a lot of people are getting into. And we're seeing some interesting things happening when it comes to photo based authentication. So you can do that virtually. We're seeing insurance AI based apps pop up that are working on blockchain and kind of doing different things with authenticity. So I think it's a really, really fascinating space. And, one of the hype cycles we've kind of seen, and I'm sure a lot in the contemporary art world wanted to see the back of, was NFTs. But I'm a huge believer, not necessarily in, I think things got NFT became a label for kind of any digital art, and whether it was a crypto punk or anything else, NFT was this kind of catch-all term, and really, NFT was about the token itself. It was about the contract that went with it. It was about anything else, but we just started to refer to any digital art as kind of an NFT, and I, for me, I'm a big believer in digital collectibles. It doesn't matter if that's art or a digital sneaker or a pudgy penguin or whatever it may be, which are things that have popped up through mainly Web3 and crypto. And I think there's really interesting things happening there. What I'm seeing in younger audiences is digital collectibles are very normalized. If you're a millennial or a boomer or Gen X or whatever, like you're like can't get your head around this to a certain extent unless you've come into contact with your kids maybe. But what I'm seeing is my son loves FIFA packs. He's like, "Can I get a new pack on FIFA?" And then he opens this virtual digital pack, and then him and his friend are sending each other what the rating of their team is, and it's like, "Oh, can you message my friend's mum and send a picture of my team and ask her to ask him to send me a picture of his team?" And it's social credibility in younger age groups. What is your digital footprint and what are you doing and how's that leading to your social credibility at school? We're seeing people buying skins on Fortnite. These are all digital collectibles. And then we're seeing some things like the FIFA cards, translate into buying physical packs of football cards that you collect throughout a football season. So, we're seeing that physical digital crossover. We're seeing digital collectibles is very normalized in Gen Alpha, Gen Z, um, largely dismissed. I get why the kind of art form of digital art and even AI created art, and the fact that people don't think that as much goes into it as physical, and it's this kind of blasphemy compared to physical artworks. But it's real, and there's a real scene here, whether it's digital art, whether it's NFT kind of collecting or collectibles, and people are buying things on OpenSea with crypto. I don't want to get too technical because I'm aware that not everybody might understand what these things are, but for me, art as a form and as a medium is completely in flux at the minute. And I think there's this huge divide. I get to see kind of all sides. And I think there's this huge divide between what people appreciate when it comes to digital art in the contemporary world. And we've done some amazing digital art projects on our platform. I mentioned Doug Aitken. We also did Eric Fischel, where he created artworks using tilt brush, and then we worked with him to get those inside of Vortic, and then we actually fabricated those sculptures, and they were physically for sale, but you could view them and you could buy them from an immersive experience before they were fabricated. So again, we're cutting down cost and wastage there. But yeah, there's some fantastic things that have happened, and there are some people that get it, but we're kind of at that early adopter stage. In the innovator, we're looking at diffusion theory. We're right at the beginning of that curve in the high end contemporary world. And I think where the real action's happening is at the grassroots, where people aren't as afraid or as constrained to innovate and try different things. And for me, this is one of the most fascinating things in the art world right now, because what AI does, I know I'm hopping around. We've had Web3, blockchain, AI, but what AI does is it really opens up technology to everybody, and it makes a lot more things possible. And you could imagine a world where anybody just creates their own app. You don't need a third party app. You just create your own, whatever you want, and you might just share that with friends. And that's possible because the barrier to entry is lower, and we're still not there completely, that it's flick of a switch, but we're getting there. And what that means is people have got to get very, very good at distribution. And distribution, and what I mean by that is marketing. So how do people now adapt to be better marketeers? And how do people really, because the contemporary art world, in my view, and I don't want to offend any of my clients or anything, but I come from more of I was working with brands, and brands and e-commerce and commerce brands are very, very good at marketing multiple channels, multiple campaigns, above the line, below the line, huge ad stuff. And in the contemporary art world, it's a press release, and you might have a website and you might have an Instagram. But what we're seeing at the grassroots level is Discord communities popping up. We're seeing people willing to pay. We're seeing these new segmentations of collectors emerge. A lot of it because of Web3 and these new technologies. But what we're seeing is, people willing to pay for the behind the scenes content of creating artworks. And they value that more than maybe the end output, the artwork itself. But if you can go on that journey with an artist, whichever medium they're working in, access that content, then maybe purchase something at the end of it. It doesn't have to be super exclusive, as in there's only one of one. It could be, accessible to everybody, but that journey, that community, and that ability for artists to market themselves and pretty much cut out a gallery, I think is hugely disruptive. And it's, for me, one of the most fascinating things happening right now.
Absolutely. I love that sort of disintermediation, as they refer to it, the idea that you're getting rid of that middle sort of player or actor, and all the way, using different forms of technology to enable basically greater agency and empowerment for individual creators. And I think that's some really interesting thoughts that you've suggested there, Nick, about what's potentially likely to happen in the next few years. Now, I'm very conscious of time.
Yeah.
And so what I wanted to do was just before asking if there's any, in fact, whilst I've asked this final question, if any other questions from anyone who's attending the session you might have, please pop them in the chat, and we'll attend to them after Nick gives us his final song on I'm so excited to hear about the things that Vortec's got in store going forward. You've very, very subtly suggested that there might be something about a new platform for creatives, and I just want to get the lowdown. Please tell us all about what's going on and what Vortec has sort of got up its sleeve, or whatever you can disclose on this call at this particular time.
Yes, so yeah, I feel like I'm going to be one of those tech guys that's like, I can't tell you, but something's coming. But no, you know, from a strategic perspective, I'm constantly looking at all of these trends, and you know, that's really a large part of my role is to understand what's going on across the whole ecosystem and what opportunities that brings us as an organization, where audiences might gravitate more towards our kind of technology than others. And that's why I'm so excited about what's going on. You know, there's some great stuff happening, and a shout out to Imi Reed, who runs Artist Pages, and we've seen her and how accessible she's making art to younger audiences, to Gen Z, and you know, she's grown her social media followers to over 1 million subs across multiple platforms in a very short space of time, in maybe a year to 18 months, and it shows that the appetite for art digital content is there, especially in these younger audiences, and it's about making it accessible and relevant to those audiences. And I think that's the key. And I think one of the great things that happened with Vortic was people could put on a headset, be in a gallery, and it would actually lower the barrier to entry to going there physically, because you feel less intimidated if it's an art fair or if it's a contemporary art gallery with a buzzer on the door. You're a bit more confident in pushing that buzzer because you know you kind of know what's behind the door, whereas it can be a bit intimidating otherwise. So what we're trying to do is carry on along that theme: how to make accessible art accessible to more audiences, how to work with creatives. So we're very much looking for the next generation of creatives who want to come and use our technology for whatever purpose they see fit. It could be an independent artist who doesn't have gallery representation, doesn't have a great studio to bring people along to, doesn't really have any way to present their works all together other than a website or an Instagram. And what we're looking at doing is opening up our platform to independent artists. They can come and use the tools that are being used by, you know, the biggest and best galleries and museums in the world. And they can create exhibitions and they can put those out online. They can create videos from within the platform of fly throughs. They can add audio to artworks to talk about their artworks and storytell in new ways. So some of that is going to be coming through in the next 12 months, to open up the platform at a much more accessible price point to those types of artists who can use our tools and really use them in any which way that they'd like to, embed things in their own websites. You know, there's going to be a few different products coming, and what we're looking for is for people to tell us what they want and start using things and explore. And that's not just independent artists as we think of in the art world. You know, this could be anybody that, you know, you might be a collector of sneakers and you want to put your sneaker collection, you want to digitize it and open it up to the public, or it could be weird and wacky things that you collect and you want to find communities and audiences to show that to. It could be 3D artists who create 3D assets and they can put them on, you know, not very interactive websites, but they could create their own world, show off their own things. So yeah, lots of interesting things that yeah, I probably gave away too much more than I should. But I'll tell you more about and watch this space over the next 12 months. But we're certainly looking to work with as many creatives as possible to explore how the technology can be used as widely as possible to make art and people's creativity more accessible, and get it out to the communities that are interested. So yeah.
That's so exciting, Nick. Honestly, thank you so much for sharing what you're allowed to share, whether or not. It was fantastic and really, really interesting to see sort of the empowerment that's going to be coming through in the next sort of 12 months for creators to access the tools, as you say, with the, you know, the best galleries and the best artists in the world have got access to those tools already. So there's no sort of standard that you have to worry about too much there. Now, there is one quick final question I just got in the chat from Anna here. We've got about 1 minute left. While digital collectibles are becoming increasingly normalized among younger generations, how do you see traditional older generation collectors responding to the shift? Pretty classic one. Any sort of any insights that you've seen across the sector?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is, if you've got your established collectors, they've got huge collections, they're, kind of leveraged up to the hilt on those, and they're in storage, and they're, and what I find those types of collectors, the high net worth ultra collectors looking for is the hot young things that maybe grow in value, but a lot of people have been burnt by artists going really, really high in value, and then that not being sustainable, or some risk there. So people are looking to, a little bit like in the VC world, you back something early and hopefully watch it grow. But what this has meant, and because that world is inaccessible to a lot of people, is this kind of red chip collector has popped up, who are a bit more popular culture, who are more embracive of like cause, and these more mainstream. Everyone's got a secret cause, but no one wants to talk about it in the contemporary art world. But yeah, they're more kind of pop art. They're more open to digital art. They're more open to just having a much wider collection. And that's the group really with the spending power that are probably spending between, a couple of thousand and maybe 50,000. And they're willing to embrace whatever fits in their spending power and that price bracket. It's less traditional, it's more diverse. And then at the bottom end, people spending maybe 5 to 50 or £100, Gen Z, early stage audiences that want to collect something, we're seeing them maybe buying, you know, certain things from their favorite artists that they want to support. And there's definitely more of a community theme to things, and supporting artists that they believe in, and that resonate with them. And they're willing to do that in more micro payment. So there's no big kind of shift in the ultra high net worth guys that, collects fine art and the best contemporary art around in going to digital. We've seen maybe some people like Paris Hilton maybe personify. She probably straddles, like, she's got the cash to be at the top end, and she is, and she does collect there. But we're also seeing her in more of that mid section, the red chip collector section, where she's buying NFTs or digital art. She's experimenting. She's got a diverse portfolio. She's following her heart a bit more. It's less about maybe the investment potential and the return, and it's more about diversification and supporting people.
Fantastic, Nick. Thank you so, so much for everything that you've provided for us today. I know I'm very, very conscious of time. We've got a very busy schedule. It's 1 minute past our finishing time. So I apologize in advance, Camille, for not being able to attend to your question. But please bring that question to the next webinar seminar series, because we'll definitely explore those themes throughout. But Nick, honestly, thank you so much for taking this time out of your Monday morning. Sorry, Monday morning, Friday morning. My gosh, my head is getting very close to the weekend because it's nighttime on a Friday here in Melbourne. Thank you so much for for everything you've shared with us today. Your insights are so invaluable. It's great to see what your organization's doing, where you guys are finding synergies, and where you're seeing kind of the market moving going forward, and the themes around artificial intelligence, blockchain. I mean, everything's been covered so succinctly, Nick, and there's no one better positioned with a really kind of 360 optic than you to be able to take us through these ideas. So honestly, we've heard some fantastic stuff today, and thank you once again for all of us here, and myself specifically, on joining the call today. And boy, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Friday and weekend ahead.
Thanks, Gareth, and thanks to Digital Original for the invite. I've really enjoyed it, and yeah, we need to catch up more often, because now I'm not, yeah, now the lecturing stuff, we're not doing that as much. It would be good to, yeah, catch up more regularly. So yeah, always happy to chat, and if anybody wants to connect, hit me up on LinkedIn, and yeah, if I can share any details afterwards, like slides or anything, I will.
Perfect. Thank you so, so much indeed, Nick. I really appreciate it. And a wonderful thank you, everyone who's joined the call. It's been awesome. And have a wonderful day ahead, guys. And we'll catch you up next time for the next discussion with Tova Ossad, not too far away from now.
Yes, thank you so much to everyone who joined us today, and a big thanks to Garrett and Nick for such a great, insightful conversation. And don't forget that our final session will be just in a couple of days. It's like right around the corner. It would be on 11th June, so if you haven't registered yet, it's time to register. And I just sent the link for registration in our chat, so you can proceed via the link and read all the information about the third webinar and register. And it's session that you definitely don't miss. And we will talk with the Tova Osad, founder of Osad Art Management, about very important and interesting topics about like elections, economic shift, and policy updates. And we know that here our audience and around our audience are artists and gallery representatives and creators. And we know that you want a professional space to share and sell your artworks and with more visibility, with more control. And you can receive everything now and just proceed via the link in chat and register in our site and create a storefront. So, link for the third webinar in the chat and link for registration in the chat already. And thanks again for everyone. And I wish great, fruitful, and positive Friday. And see you soon. Bye, everyone.